I adjusted my pearl earrings, a splurge for my daughter Victoria's 35th birthday, and smoothed down my navy dress as I entered the grand ballroom of Bellamy Events. The room sparkled with crystal chandeliers I'd personally selected when we renovated the venue last year. Not that Victoria knew I was co-owner. She never asked about my work. The hostess approached with a tight smile. "Your name, ma'am?" "Tracy Williams. I'm Victoria's mother." Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, Ms. Williams. Let me show you to your seat." I followed her through the crowd, expecting to join Victoria at the main table. Instead, we kept walking and walking until we reached a corner table partially hidden behind a large floral arrangement. "Here you are," she said, gesturing to a table where three elderly people I didn't recognize sat alongside what appeared to be catering staff on break. "There must be a mistake," I said. "I'm Victoria's mother." The hostess checked her clipboard. "No mistake, ma'am. Table 15. My chest tightened as I sat down. From this angle, I could barely see Victoria, radiant in her designer dress, laughing with her husband Mark and their wealthy friends. "Hello." I greeted my tablemates with a forced smile. No one responded beyond polite nods. I'd spent weeks thinking about this evening. Victoria and I had drifted apart over the years, especially after she married Mark, whose family came from old money. But I thought today might be different. I'd even practice what I'd say in her birthday toast. A waiter delivered champagne, and I watched as Victoria's father-in-law stood to make a speech. He'd been invited to speak. I hadn't. A man in an expensive suit approached our table, looking confused. "Excuse me, but who are you folks?" I thought I knew all of Victoria's circle. Before I could answer, Victoria appeared beside him, champagne in hand. "Oh, Robert, don't bother them," she said, placing a manicured hand on his arm. Then she glanced at me with barely a flicker of recognition. "She's just one of the hired help for tonight." Her voice dropped slightly. "A cleaning lady who came to assist." The man nodded and they walked away, already discussing something else. I sat frozen, the champagne flute trembling in my hand. A cleaning lady. Not even my mother. Just help. I'd spent 30 years building a life for us after her father left. Worked 3 jobs until I saved enough to buy into this very venue. Now I owned half of Bellamy Events and 2 other properties. All to ensure Victoria would never want for anything. And she couldn't even acknowledge me as her mother. As dinner progressed, I watched Victoria table hop, never once making her way to our corner. I picked at my salmon, remembering how I'd once skipped meals to afford her dance lessons. How I'd worn the same winter coat for a decade while buying her new clothes each season. "Excuse me," said an elderly woman at our table. "Did I hear correctly? You're Victoria's mother." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I'm Mark's great-aunt Harriet. Nobody pays attention to me either." She patted my hand. That girl always was more concerned with appearances than substance. When dessert arrived, I couldn't take another bite. I gathered my purse and stood. "Leaving so soon?" Harriet asked. "I think my presence isn't required," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. As I walked toward the exit, Victoria intercepted me, eyes narrowing. "Where are you going? The party's barely started." "I'm just the hired help, remember? I've finished my shift." Her expression flickered between confusion and annoyance. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I cut in, surprising us both with my firmness. "You meant every word." For the first time in decades, I walked away from my daughter without looking back. And what surprised me most wasn't her cruelty. It was my sudden, overwhelming sense of clarity. I'd spent my life being invisible to the one person who should have seen me most clearly. As I drove home to my modest apartment above my office, I realized something had broken inside me tonight. Something that couldn't be fixed with another sacrifice or silent forgiveness. The morning after Victoria's party, I woke up with swollen eyes and a strange sense of lightness. I made coffee and stood by my apartment window, overlooking the street where I built my business from nothing. My phone buzzed with messages from Victoria, but I couldn't bring myself to read them yet. After what happened at the party, I needed time to think. 30 years of memories flooded back. Victoria at 5, insisting on a princess birthday party when we could barely afford rent. Me staying up all night sewing her costume because we couldn't buy one. The way her eyes lit up the next day. Back then, my sacrifices still mattered to her. I showered and headed downstairs to the office of Bellamy Events. My business partner Diane was already there. "How was the big party?" she asked. "Illuminating," I replied, setting down my coffee. Victoria told a guest I was the cleaning lady. Diane's jaw dropped. "She what?" "She has no idea I co-own the venue where she held her party." I sank into my chair. After all these years, I'm still just the embarrassing mother she wants to hide. "Why have you never told her about your success?" Diane asked. The question hung in the air. Truth was, I'd kept my achievements quiet at first to spare Victoria's feelings. Her father had abandoned us for a younger woman with family money. Victoria had grown up watching her friends with their fancy houses, while we lived in a tiny apartment. When she'd gotten older, she gravitated toward wealthy friends, always seeking what she felt she'd been denied. I thought if she knew I had money, she'd feel I'd deprived her intentionally all those years. I sighed. Then it became easier to let her believe what she wanted. "While you paid for her college tuition and her lavish wedding." Diane shook her head. "I transferred the money as scholarships and wedding gifts from anonymous benefactors through my lawyer." Victoria never questioned where the money came from. She married into that wealthy family and suddenly didn't want anything to do with her common mother, I said. It was easier to let her live in her world and me in mine. "Until last night," Diane noted. My phone buzzed again. "Victoria." "You should answer," Diane said. "Maybe she's calling to apologize." I finally checked the messages. "Mom, why did you leave so early? You embarrassed me by walking out like that." Mark's family noticed. They're asking questions. Not a single word of apology. I called her back. When she answered, her voice was tight. "Finally. I've been trying to reach you all morning." "I was busy," I said. "Well, you caused quite a scene leaving early." Mark's mother commented on it. "No, how are you?" No acknowledgement of what she'd said. "Victoria," I said slowly. "Do you remember what you called me last night?" "What?" "No. What are you talking about?" "When that man asked who I was, you called me the help. A cleaning lady." Silence then. "I didn't mean it like that. You're being sensitive." "It was just easier than explaining." "Explaining what? That I'm your mother? Is that so difficult to admit?" "Mom." Her voice had that patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years. "You know how these people are. Image is everything. If they knew my mother was so ordinary." The word hit like a slap. Ordinary. "Mark's considering a position at his father's firm," she continued. "We need to make the right impression. You understand, don't you? All those years, all those sacrifices reduced to ordinary." "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I've always understood." "Good, then we can." "No, Victoria. Not anymore." I hung up as Diane watched, wide-eyed. "Tracy." I took a deep breath. "I think it's time Victoria learned exactly who her ordinary mother is." Diane smiled slowly. "What are you planning?" Before I could answer, my phone rang again. Not Victoria this time, but her husband Mark. That was unusual. In 5 years of marriage, he'd called me exactly twice. "Hello, Mark." "Tracy," he sounded strained. "I'm sorry to bother you, but we need to talk. It's important." "About Victoria." Something in his tone made my heart skip. "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. Can we meet for lunch?" Without Victoria knowing. I agreed to meet him at a restaurant downtown, my mind racing. In all our interactions, Mark had treated me with polite disinterest at best. What could be so urgent now? As I grabbed my purse, Diane caught my arm. "Whatever you're planning, remember something. You've spent your whole life being invisible for Victoria's sake. Maybe it's time to stop hiding who you really are." I nodded, a strange determination building inside me. For 30 years, I'd allowed myself to be diminished for my daughter's comfort. Last night had finally shown me the truth. No sacrifice would ever be enough. I arrived at Hillcrest Restaurant 15 minutes early. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. I'd hosted several corporate events here for clients. "Ms. Williams, so lovely to see you. Your usual table." "Thank you, James. I'm meeting someone." He led me to my preferred corner spot. Private yet with a view of the entrance. I ordered water and waited, wondering what could be so urgent that Mark needed to meet in secret. At precisely noon, Mark strode in, looking impeccable in his tailored suit, though his eyes betrayed fatigue. James led him to my table. "Tracy," Mark nodded, his usual cool demeanor replaced by something unfamiliar. Desperation. "Mark, this is unexpected." He ordered scotch, then leaned forward. "I need your help." I raised an eyebrow. "With?" Mark glanced around, lowering his voice. "Victoria doesn't know I'm here. She'd be furious." "I'm listening." He downed half his scotch in one gulp. "We're in trouble, Tracy. Financial trouble." The confession hung between us. For 5 years, Mark had barely acknowledged my existence beyond obligatory holiday greetings. What kind of trouble? Serious trouble. My investments tanked 6 months ago. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. Victoria's credit cards are maxed out. I kept my expression neutral. "I thought your family had money." He laughed bitterly. "My family's name has money, but my father controls every penny. When I didn't take the path he wanted, let's just say I've been cut off. And Victoria doesn't know?" Mark shook his head. "She thinks we're still wealthy. I've been keeping up appearances, but..." "Why tell me? Surely your family." "My father made it clear he won't help unless I come work for him, something I've refused for years." He finished his scotch. "Victoria mentioned you're always good with money despite..." He gestured vaguely, implying my perceived limited means. Despite being ordinary? I couldn't resist. He had the decency to look embarrassed. "Look, I know we haven't been close. Victoria has certain expectations about lifestyle. I've maintained the illusion as long as possible, but we're facing foreclosure. How much are we talking about?" When he named the figure, I didn't flinch, though it was substantial. For the first time, Mark really looked at me, confusion crossing his face. "I'll think about it," I said evenly. "No promises." He nodded, relief softening his features. "Thank you. Victoria can't know I came to you." After he left, I sat alone, turning my water glass slowly. All those years Victoria had been chasing wealth, status, acceptance in a world that would discard her the moment money ran out. My phone buzzed. "Victoria again." "Yes," I answered. "Mom, we need to talk. Tonight. Can you come over?" "Actually, Victoria, I think you should come to my office." "Your office? Why can't?" "Because it's time you saw what I actually do." 3 hours later, Victoria walked into Bellamy Events, her expression a mixture of confusion and mild disdain as she took in the elegant office. "You work here?" "As what, a secretary?" Diane, passing by, nearly choked. I introduced them. "Victoria, this is Diane Cooper, my business partner." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Business partner? In what?" "Bellamy Events. We co-own it, along with 2 other venues." Victoria stared, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about? You've been a bookkeeper for small businesses your whole life." "That was 20 years ago," I said calmly. "I started investing in properties 15 years ago. Diane and I bought this place 10 years back. We've since expanded." Victoria sank into a chair. "This doesn't make sense. If you own all this, why do you live in that tiny apartment? Why have you let me believe that I was struggling? That I was just an ordinary cleaning lady you could dismiss at your birthday party?" Her cheeks flushed. "That was a misunderstanding." "No, it wasn't. You've been ashamed of me your whole adult life. That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you invited me to dinner with your friends? Or introduced me to Mark's colleagues?" Victoria stood up, anger replacing shock. "So this was all some test? You've been secretly rich while letting me think you needed my help? How could you lie to me like this?" I nearly laughed at the irony. "I never lied. You never asked. You were too busy being embarrassed by your ordinary mother." "This isn't fair," she repeated, voice breaking. "You've made me look like a fool." "No, Victoria. You managed that all on your own." Her eyes filled with tears, whether from shame or anger I couldn't tell. "Does Mark know about this?" she demanded. "Not yet," I said carefully. "But I think it's time for some honesty between all of us." Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at it, Then at me, panic flashing across her face. It's Mark. He can't know I'm here. I watched my daughter, this woman who treated me as an embarrassment for years, suddenly afraid her husband would discover her secret meeting with her mother. Answer it, I said. In fact, tell him to join us. I think we all need to have a long overdue conversation. Victoria stared at her still ringing phone, caught between her carefully constructed world and the truth she could no longer avoid. Victoria's hand trembled as she answered the phone. Mark? I'm just shopping. She avoided my eyes. I'll be home soon. She hung up and turned to me, her composed facade crumbling. You had no right to keep this from me. Like you had no right to call me the help at your own birthday party? I countered. That was different. I was just protecting your image. I know. I leaned against my desk. Just like I know about your financial troubles. Her face paled. What are you talking about? Mark came to see me today. He told me everything. Victoria sank back into the chair, her designer purse slipping to the floor. He did what? For the first time, I saw my daughter without her carefully maintained veneer, vulnerable, frightened, cornered. Part of me wanted to comfort her as I had when she was small. Another part, the part still raw from years of dismissal, held back. He's desperate, Victoria. You're about to lose your house. That's impossible, she whispered, but her eyes betrayed her. She'd suspected something. Mark would never go behind my back like that. Like you've gone behind mine for years? Hiding me from your friends? Pretending I was just some embarrassing relative you had to tolerate. The words hung between us. Victoria looked away, tears welling. I didn't mean to hurt you, she finally said. Didn't you? I asked quietly. Every time you excluded me, every time you changed the subject when your friends asked about your family. What did you think that would do? A tear slid down her cheek. You don't understand. Mark's world is different. Everything is about appearances, connections, the right schools, the right clubs. And the wrong mother would ruin everything? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I moved to the window, watching the late afternoon traffic. In the reflection, I could see Victoria sitting small and defeated. I'd imagined this confrontation for years, thought I'd feel vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. I could help you, I said finally. Victoria's head snapped up. What? I could help with your financial situation. Prevent foreclosure. Give you time to rebuild. Hope flickered across her face. You would do that? After everything. I turned to face her. On one condition. Anything, she said quickly. You come work for me. Here at Bellamy Events. Starting at the bottom. Victoria stared as if I'd suggested she fly to the moon. Work? For you. 6 months. You learn the business from the ground up. No special treatment. But, why? Because it's time you understood what I've built. What real work looks like. I paused. And because if I simply give you money, nothing between us will change. Victoria stood up, her momentary vulnerability hardening. This is punishment, isn't it? For what I said at the party. No, I replied. It's an opportunity. One you desperately need. I have a degree from Stanford. I don't need to work as some event planner. There it was again, that dismissal of everything I'd achieved. I kept my voice level. What you have is crushing debt, a house you can't afford, and a husband who went behind your back to ask your ordinary mother for help. Her shoulders slumped. The truth was finally sinking in. I can't, she whispered. People would talk. Let them. I gathered my purse, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. Think about it. The offer stands until tomorrow. Victoria clutched her own designer bag like a shield. And if I refuse? Then you and Mark figure things out on your own. A flash of panic crossed her face. You'd let us lose everything? For 30 years I'd been the safety net, the invisible support system. Always giving, never asking. I won't let you manipulate me with guilt anymore, Victoria. This is business. You need money, I need accountability. Take it or leave it. As I walked her to the elevator, she seemed smaller somehow, stripped of the confidence that came from believing she held all the cards. You'll call tomorrow with your decision? I asked. She nodded stiffly, then hesitated. Did you really pay for my Stanford tuition? And the wedding? I met her gaze. Every penny. The elevator doors closed on her shocked expression. Diane appeared from her office where she'd tactfully retreated during our confrontation. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know." The adrenaline of confrontation was fading, leaving me drained. "She might refuse." "She won't." Diane squeezed my shoulder. "She needs the money too badly." Later that evening, I sat on my apartment balcony watching the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "I'll do it. When do I start?" No thanks, no acknowledgement of what this concession must have cost her pride. Just acceptance of the inevitable. I typed back Monday 8 a.m. Dress appropriately for manual work. As I set down my phone, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Would forcing Victoria into my world build a bridge between us or destroy what little connection remained? Was I offering an olive branch or exacting revenge? The line between the two felt dangerously thin. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mark. "Thank you. I know this can't be easy." She told me everything. So Victoria had finally been honest with her husband. It was a start. I didn't reply. Tomorrow would arrive soon enough, bringing with it either the beginning of reconciliation or the final fracture of a relationship built on secrets and sacrifice. For the first time in decades, I couldn't predict which way it would go. And strangely, that uncertainty felt like freedom. Lessons in humility. Monday morning arrived with a steady drizzle that matched my mood. I arrived at the office early, uncertain whether Victoria would actually show up. At precisely 8 a.m., the elevator doors opened. Victoria stood there in designer jeans, a cashmere sweater, and impractical heels. Her expression wavered between defiance and uncertainty. "Good morning," I said, keeping my voice professional. "You're on time." "That's a good start." Diane handed her a staff uniform, black pants and a polo shirt with our logo. Victoria stared at it like it was a snake. "I need to wear this." "Everyone does," Diane replied. "Changing room is down the hall." When Victoria emerged 10 minutes later, she looked almost unrecognizable without her usual polished appearance. Younger somehow. Vulnerable. "First assignment," I told her. "You'll help Miguel set up the Westbrook wedding reception." "Set up? Like moving chairs?" "Exactly like that." For a moment I thought she might refuse. Then she straightened her shoulders and followed Miguel to the loading dock. Through the window I watched my daughter, whose manicured hands had never known physical labor, struggle with folding chairs and tablecloths. Twice she nearly dropped things. Once she clearly almost cried. But she kept going. "Aren't you being a little harsh?" Diane asked, joining me at the window. "She needs to understand what real work is. She's your daughter, Tracy, not an enemy." Was there a difference anymore? I wondered but kept the thought to myself. By lunchtime, Victoria's perfect hair was falling from its ponytail, her face flushed from exertion. I invited her to join me in my office. "How's it going?" I asked as she collapsed into a chair. "I've ruined a $200 manicure," she muttered, examining her chipped nails. "And I think I pulled something in my back." I opened my desk drawer and handed her a protein bar. "You need to eat better than those little salads you usually have." Victoria unwrapped it gratefully. "How do people do this every day?" she asked between bites. "They need paychecks. They have bills to pay." She flinched slightly. "Like us now." "Yes." She ate in silence for a moment. "That man Miguel. He's been here 10 years? I nodded. Started as part-time help during college. Now he manages operations for all 3 venues. He said you paid for his mother's heart surgery. I kept my expression neutral. His insurance wouldn't cover it. Victoria studied me. The cleaning staff said you remember all their children's names. That you send birthday cards. They're good people. They respect you, she said quietly. I didn't expect that. Before I could respond, my office phone rang. "Mark. Tracy, I need to speak with you. Privately." "Victoria's here," I replied, watching my daughter's expression. "Oh." He sounded surprised. "She's actually doing it then?" "She's right in front of me, Mark." "I see. Well, I'd still like to meet. About our financial arrangements. Tomorrow. My office." Victoria watched me carefully as I hung up. "He's still going behind my back." We're business partners now, I reminded her. Nothing more. Her face fell slightly. Is that all we'll ever be? The question caught me off guard. For a moment, I glimpsed the little girl who once ran to me with scraped knees, seeking comfort. That's up to you, I said finally. The next day, Mark arrived looking unusually polished. I'd asked Diane to join us. Something in his earlier eagerness had raised red flags. Tracy, he began all charm. I've been thinking about our arrangement. Go on. Victoria working here is, well, unconventional. Perhaps there's another solution. I raised an eyebrow. Such as a partnership. He leaned forward. I have connections, old school friends in banking, investment. With your assets in my network, we could expand Bellamy events nationally. Diane caught my eye, a subtle warning. You want me to hand over control of my business? Not control, partnership. Mark smiled. Victoria could have a consulting role, much more suitable than manual labor. I studied him carefully. The Mark who'd come to me desperate for help was gone. This Mark was confident, calculating. What exactly would you bring to this partnership, Mark? Besides your connections? His smile faltered. My experience in what? You've never managed a business, never met payroll, never built anything of your own. His charm vanished. I have a Harvard MBA. That your father paid for, I noted. Just like he paid for everything else until he cut you off. Mark's expression hardened. I see Victoria has been talking. No, I replied. Miguel has very good hearing. And your phone call in our lobby yesterday was quite loud. The color drained from his face. What call? The one with your father, where you explained your plan to leverage your connection to me into a business deal that would impress him. Mark stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You've always resented Victoria's life, her success. Now you want to punish her by forcing her to degrade herself here. I remained seated. The offer stands as originally presented, Mark. Victoria works here for 6 months. She learns the business. After that, we can discuss financial assistance. You'll regret this, he said coldly. I have resources you can't imagine. After he left, Diane let out a low whistle. That man is dangerous when cornered. Yes, I agreed. The question is, will Victoria choose him or herself? That evening, I was surprised to find Victoria waiting outside my apartment. Can we talk? She asked, her voice small. I let her in. She'd come straight from work, still in her uniform, her hands showing new calluses. Mark wants me to quit, she said without preamble. I'm not surprised. He says he has a better plan. That he can fix everything if I just trust him. I waited, letting her work through her thoughts. 2 weeks ago, I would have believed him without question, she continued. But now. She looked down at her roughened hands. The thing is, Mom, I don't think I know him at all anymore. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly for what felt like the first time in years. And I'm starting to think I never knew you either. Something shifted between us in that moment. A crack in the wall of distance we'd built over decades. Would you like some tea? I asked. Victoria nodded, a tentative smile forming. I'd like that very much. 3 months passed in a blur of routine. Early mornings, long days, and a gradual shift in the ground beneath our feet. Victoria had proven me wrong in a dozen small ways. She showed up every day without complaint, learned every aspect of the business, and slowly earned the respect of the staff who had initially viewed her with suspicion. I watched her transform from the entitled woman who couldn't imagine carrying chairs to someone who jumped in wherever needed, regardless of the task. Her designer clothes gathered dust in her closet, as she embraced the practical uniform of someone who worked with her hands. The Bennett reception needs final approval on flowers, Victoria said, entering my office with a portfolio. I suggested garden roses instead of peonies, given the shortage this season. I reviewed her proposal. Good choice. You've come a long way from thinking flowers were just pretty decorations. She smiled. A genuine smile I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. I had a good teacher. Our relationship remained tentative, fragile. Some days we spoke only as employer and employee. Other days we'd share small confidences over coffee. We were building something new. Neither the uncomplicated bond of her childhood, nor the strained distance of recent years. The only shadow was Mark. He'd stopped coming around after our confrontation, communicating with Victoria only through terse phone calls and sporadic texts. She had moved into my spare bedroom temporarily, though we both sensed the arrangement might become permanent. One evening as we prepared dinner together. Another new routine, Victoria's phone buzzed repeatedly. "Mark again?" I asked, noting how her shoulders tensed. "He wants me home tonight. Says he has something important to discuss." I continued chopping vegetables. "Are you going?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure there's a home to go back to anymore." Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. Diane stood there, looking uncharacteristically grim. "We have a problem," she said, stepping inside. "Mark has been approaching our vendors, telling them we're selling the business." Victoria's face drained of color. "What?" Diane handed me a stack of papers. "One of our suppliers called me, concerned. Apparently, Mark has been circulating a prospectus claiming to represent both you and Victoria as major stakeholders looking to liquidate." I scanned the documents, my stomach tightening. This is a complete fabrication. "There's more," Diane said, glancing at Victoria apologetically. "He's claiming Victoria owns half the business through marital assets." Victoria sank into a chair. "That's not possible. I would never." "Of course not," I said. "But he's using your name, your connection to me." "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know." I believed her. The woman before me now was not the same person who'd called me the help 3 months ago. "We need to confront him," Diane said. Victoria stood, straightening her shoulders with newfound resolve. "No. I'll handle this myself." "Victoria," I began. "Mom, please. I got myself into this mess by choosing status over substance. Let me fix it." I recognized the determined set of her jaw, the same expression I saw in the mirror when facing my own challenges. "All right," I said. "But you're not going alone." An hour later, we arrived at the house Victoria had once shared with Mark. Lights blazed from every window, and an unfamiliar car sat in the driveway. Victoria unlocked the door, and we stepped into what appeared to be a business meeting in progress. Mark and an older man, his father I realized, sat with 2 other men in suits, documents spread across the dining table. Mark froze mid-sentence, his expression shifting from shock to forced confidence. "Victoria! And Tracy! What an unexpected surprise." "Is it?" Victoria asked, her voice steady. "When you've been using my name to sell property that isn't yours?" The older man, Mark's father, studied me with sharp eyes. "You're Tracy Williams?" "I am. My son described you quite differently." "I bet he did." "I imagine there are many things your son has misrepresented, Mr. Harrison." Mark stood, his charm slipping. "Victoria, we should discuss it." "No," she said firmly. "We're done with secrets." She turned to the men at the table. "Whatever he's told you, it's a lie. I have no ownership stake in Bellamy Events. I am an employee, nothing more." Mark's father's expression darkened. "Mark." Mark's composure cracked. "It was going to be true eventually. Once the deal went through, I would have had the money to." "To what?" Victoria interrupted. "To keep lying to me? To everyone." She walked to the table and picked up the documents, scanning them briefly before handing them to me. "You forged my signature," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "How could you?" Mark looked desperately at his father. "Dad, this is just a misunderstanding." "Enough," Mr. Harrison snapped, standing. "Gentlemen, this meeting is concluded." After the others left, Victoria faced Mark, a new strength in her stance. "I want a divorce." 6 months later, I stood at the back of the grand ballroom at Bellamy Events, watching Victoria confidently direct staff for an elaborate corporate gala. The divorce had been finalized quickly, with Mark agreeing to generous terms in exchange for avoiding fraud charges. Victoria had officially joined the company as our events coordinator, earning the position through hard work rather than nepotism. She'd moved into her own apartment, modest but comfortable, refusing my offers of financial assistance beyond her salary. "She's good," Diane said, joining me. "Better than we were at her age." "She is," I agreed, pride warming my voice. The ballroom transformed under Victoria's vision. elegant but not ostentatious, beautiful but functional. She had an eye for detail I hadn't anticipated, along with a genuine care for our clients' experiences. As guests began arriving, Victoria approached us, elegant in her formal business attire. "Everything looks perfect," I told her. "Thanks to you," she said. "Both of you." A tall man in an impeccable suit approached, introducing himself as the CEO of the company hosting the event. "Mrs. Harrison?" he inquired, looking at Victoria. "Ms. Williams," she corrected with a smile. "Victoria Williams." She had reclaimed my surname after the divorce, a gesture that had brought tears to my eyes when she first told me. "And this," Victoria continued, taking my hand, "is Tracy Williams, the founder of Bellamy Events and my mother." The pride in her voice as she said, "my mother," filled a space inside me I hadn't realized was empty. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Victoria and I stood on the terrace, watching the city lights. "A year ago today was my birthday party," she said quietly. We don't need to revisit that," I interrupted gently. "No, I think we do." She turned to face me. I was cruel and shallow. I was so concerned with how others saw me that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. "How strong you are. How much you accomplished on your own." I squeezed her hand. "We both made mistakes. I'm having another birthday party next week," she said. "Small dinner, just a few friends. Real friends this time." She paused. "Would you come? As the guest of honor." "Guest of honor?" I echoed, surprised. Victoria smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "To celebrate the woman who taught me what really matters. Who never gave up on me, even when I gave her every reason to." I pulled her into an embrace, feeling the weight of decades of misunderstandings finally lifting. "I'd be honored," I said. A week later, I sat at the head of a table surrounded by Victoria's new friends. Colleagues from work, neighbors, people who knew her as she truly was, not the facade she'd once maintained. Victoria stood, raising her glass. "To my mother," she said, her voice clear and strong, "who taught me that true worth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you build. Who gave me the greatest gift of all, the chance to fail, to learn, and to become someone better." As glasses clinked and warm smiles surrounded me, I realized that sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. Victoria and I had traversed a landscape of hurt, pride, and misunderstanding to reach this moment of genuine connection. The chair at the family table wasn't empty anymore. We had both finally found our places, not at opposite ends of a vast divide, but side by side, facing the future together.